My name is Karn Malhotra. I presently run ThisIsCreativeAi, which is a company focused on leadership branding. We work with some fantastic leaders in a variety of different sectors. What I try and do with leaders is have clarity in what is it that they want to achieve. The reality is that they're just looking for vanity metrics. You should work 70 hours, 90 hours. Everyone has a very strong opinion about that. I know of some accounts that post once every hour. It's almost like a news feed. A brand is also a person. ABBS is a personality.
In this episode of Changemakers by ABBS, we have Mr. Karn Malhotra, a marketing and branding professional who helps leaders build thought leadership on LinkedIn through systems that scale. With over 2 decades of experience as a founder, product innovator, and marketing leader, Karn has worked with top brands like Accenture, Tata Motors, and 3M. He also shares insights from his epic 7,000-kilometer road trip across India and how it helped him in his personal and professional life. Hello, Mr. Kern. I welcome you to Changemakers by ABBS podcast. Thank you so much for joining us in today.
Thank you for having me today, Nita. Lovely to be here.
So, before we begin the actual conversation, would you mind letting us know a bit about yourself, your journey so far, and also the work that you do?
Sure, certainly. My name is Karn Malhotra. I presently run ThisIsCreativeAi, which is a company focused on leadership branding. We help leaders build their personal narrative online, which is especially relevant in this time of AI, perfection, everything, right? So speaking with the imperfect, accepting the imperfections of us as people, and then being able to speak about ourselves confidently. That's something that I help leaders do presently. My background, how did I lead up to this? I mean, if I go right from the beginning, very briefly, my background is in branding and marketing. I studied advertising and graphic design. I come from a Punjabi family. Business is in the blood. So very straight out of college, I started my first company at 22. I ran that branding and design firm called Exit Design. I ran that for about 16 and a half, 17 years. We did a lot of really interesting work with brands from 3M, Tata Motors, Accenture, Decathlon, primarily focused on below the line B2B communication. That, I think, played a critical role in the work that I do today, because building personal narratives is all about trust, and B2B communication is primarily about trust, right? Relationship building. So I did exit design for a while, and that was a traditional sort of branding service business, right? And I was like, I want to buy one nice fancy sports car, and I don't know if a traditional service business will get me there, or at least that was my belief at the time. And so I took a lot of my learnings and took them into building Outlined, which was, think of it as a B2B version of Canva. So where you have standardized communication, B2B communication, again, consistency, trust. So when from a visual perspective, it's all about standardization and communication, right? So for example, if I were to say KFC to you, what color comes to mind?
Right.
Exactly. So you think of red and white and black. But suddenly you go to KFC tomorrow and you feel like you want to have like your veg zinger burger or something. And you go in there and you see pink and purple. The font is the same. Everything layout looks the same, but the colors are very different. So then it makes you wonder, right? Is this the same brand? Is it not?
Yeah.
Therefore, for you as a consumer, owning that consistency in the communication is very important. That's what we helped do with Outlined. It was a tremendous learning for me personally, because I come from a creative background. I studied advertising, graphic design, was a de facto business and creative head for my company at that time. And now building a tech product, I have to learn to speak code, and speak that kind of language with developers. And it's a completely new learning for me. Fantastic learning. I'm very grateful for that. But I think cumulatively, because for a variety of reasons, many of which I take ownership of, we solved the problem, but we took too long to get there. And I think, I had to move on from it, because after a point, objectively, I was putting more money into it than money was coming out, right? So I had to move on from that. I chose to move on from that. And I was always curious about what would it be like to, at this point, I've, been working for myself or building things for about 18, 19 years. And I was curious about what would it be like to work for someone else? Because if you want to be a good leader, you also need to know how to follow well. And that was my belief. And it made me wonder that, are there some, you know tools in my armory that are missing, that need a little bit of sharpening, and I can learn from someone else. So I joined Talent 500 as the head of marketing, Tech Talent Marketplace. I worked with them for a year. Fantastic learning experience, great team. Then I left that and I joined another company called Neol, and when I joined them, they were a creative talent marketplace, and again I was head of marketing there. So I did those two stints for a while, but one principal learning I had is when you're working for someone else, you don't own your time. The paycheck is nice. I mean, you get a nice, a very healthy paycheck, but I don't own my time. And so I decided to get back into entrepreneurship. That's when I started This is Creative AI, because this was, start of 23, Feb 2023, and ChatGPT had just come out in October, November 22. So there's this whole AI wave. And when I was building Outlined, I had done a podcast called the Creative AI Podcast. I was having conversations with people. What I realized at that time in January 2023, conversations that I had had with people in 2019 about AI were still relevant, because people cumulatively, their experience and their knowledge was still at a surface level. So I jumped back in, starting a podcast. Then we focused on helping in-house marketing teams with their workflows, which now, I didn't mention it at the outset, but in addition to personal branding for leaders, we also focus on building agentic workflows for SMEs. Now, that's also something that we do. But in 23 early, when I was doing the podcast and I was helping in-house marketing teams, we did that a little while. And towards the end of the year, one of those teams said, so our MD needs a little help with his personal brand on LinkedIn. Do you think you can help? I was like, how hard can it be? Maybe I'll use a few tools and it should be okay. And that's when I realized that it's a real need. A lot of people have a lot to say, have a tremendous amount of experience, life experience, that can be tremendously beneficial to the next set of people coming through. Even, let's say, he's senior leadership, he or she is senior leadership, or they are senior leadership with 15, 20 years experience. Even speaking to the mid management who have 8, 10 years experience, there's a lot to share. And at that time, we had just gone through COVID. Then we were having this ChatGPT Gen AI wave. So there's a lot of anxiety, right? And I realized that a lot of leaders, it's so important to help them have clarity on what is it that they should say. Actually, they have a sense of what they want to say. They just don't know the medium. They might not know LinkedIn. They might not know how to present their personal narrative a certain way, how to write, how to present themselves on video. Like someone like you knows that intuitively. But for someone who hasn't done that, it's very scary. So, and fast forward to today, I'm very fortunate to say that we work with some fantastic leaders in a variety of different sectors, from legal to manufacturing to tech, both in traditional business as also on the corporate side. And we do it one of two ways, which is either we do a coaching context, or we do it as a completely managed service. Yeah, it's definitely been a very enriching journey for me, and I hope and I'm pretty sure there are many more interesting milestones to come.
Right. Absolutely. So, we are living in an era like a lot of startups and a lot of businesses are coming up. And also we know that the spokesperson of that company is actually the face or the brand value in front of the audience. So, personal branding is a must in this era, I must say. So, you are yourself known as the personal marketer for leaders. So, how is your specific experience in this area?
No, great question. Thank you for that, Nita. I think right at the outset, what I try and do with leaders is have clarity in what is it that they want to achieve in a 12-month timeline. Because if it's just about writing, they can use online tools, they can get a freelance writer. Why do they need to work with someone who has 20 plus years experience in branding, in tech, in entrepreneurship? Because cost also changes accordingly, right? So what is the value add? And I think because of the fact that I understand a lot of their challenges, whether it's about leading teams, building teams in a distributed context, talking tech in a variety of different sort of contexts, working with change management in a variety of sort of different contexts across different geographies. All of these things are things that I've sort of done. Now, I might set this context with them, but it's very important for them to know, okay, in a 12-month period, do I want more followers? Do I want more invitations to podcasts, like, for example, to speak with someone like you? Do I want to be invited onto webinars, onto keynote speeches? Do I want more leads? I'm a sales leader and I want to figure out if I can use my personal content marketing as a means to generate warm leads. Is that possible? So this is the kind of conversation I have with them right at the outset. That then helps set the context. Now, some leaders, they are saying, listen, they see the long term game, right? They see, okay, I want to build this arc over a period of time. But I've also had experiences working with some leaders who have said to me that, yeah, I submit to whatever it is that you are going to guide me on. But the reality is that they're just looking for vanity metrics. They're looking for more followers. They're looking for more, likes and comments and all of that.
Especially numbers, yeah.
They're looking for numbers, right? And that's
Mhm.
fine. And that could be fine because, sure, it makes a difference if you have 50 followers versus 50,000 followers. But if you're 50,000 followers, your cumulative engagement rate. So, engagement rate is a key metric on LinkedIn, and I would imagine on any kind of social media platform, like, as you would also know, right? So on LinkedIn, you divide your impressions by the total number of engagements that you've had, your comments, likes, etc., and you arrive at a certain percentage. If you are more than 3, 4, 5%, you are then creating content that is in the top 1% of thought leadership content, right? And that to me is the most important. It makes no difference if you have 50,000 followers, but then if you have one comment, two comments, maybe 70 likes, and there's no real engagement with your post. So I think setting that distinction, what is something that you want to create true value around, and separating that from something that was some is, instead of like just like on virtual backslapping, acha acha sir, you did a very good job, sir, very good job, but what does that lead to? So there are challenges around that, but it's interesting to have an open dialogue.
So, what is that one key lesson that you have learned from being a founder and also the product builder and the marketing editor?
One key lesson that I've learned from being a founder, product, and marketing: you can't get ahead unless you invite people into your vision and they naturally buy into it themselves. And today, I find every leader has their own style of motivating people. I find that I probably fit into more of that empathetic leader category. I can tell you now that when I first started out, in the first 5, 10 years at least, I was anything but empathetic. I was very much, so like I said, I come from a business background. My father was the only one who went into the service side in hospitality, but he eventually started his own business. My brother also started his own business eventually after doing consulting for a few years. And what I saw in both of them, that they're very strong personalities and very upfront, ambitious, aggressive. They have their own style of getting work done with people, and it works for them. But fundamentally, my personality is not like them. And it took me a long time to realize that and accept that and then make changes. It's like, I think when you're creative, if I speak for myself, as a creative individual starting a business at about 22, I was very passionate. I still am very passionate about the work that I do. I'm very ambitious, always have been. But at 22, I didn't have a lot of life experience. I was just very motivated, very ambitious. And I think that motivation and ambition and that drive would then play out in ways where I would rub people off the wrong way. In this intent to get work done a certain way, I would maybe push than I needed to, and sometimes push much more than I should have. And cumulatively, what I learned in my earlier businesses was attrition would be high. People would leave after sometimes 4 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever it was, because I would motivate them and drive them to achieve results beyond what they thought they were capable of. But at what price? What is the cost? The cost is we quite often work 14, 15, 16 hours, even on the weekends, just at a relentless pace. And today especially, we live in a time where, if a leader says, oh, you should work 70 hours, 90 hours, everyone has a very strong opinion about that. Now, if you think of it in the context, maybe this leader achieved a significant amount of success, saw a lot of people around them achieve a certain kind of success, working at that pace, those number of hours, but maybe they did that 20 years ago.
Yes,
you know
yes.
and sure, some of those leaders probably still function at that pace, but I think the context of the society and the world that we live in right now compared to even 5, 10, 15 years ago is very different. Just in the last 5 years, two major world events, COVID and this Gen AI wave, right? Not to account for climate change, not to account for not accounting for all the conversation around diversity, equity, inclusion. We live in a time where politically so many leaders are significantly more far right than far left. So you have many different governments across the world where very strong authoritarian figures, right? And at the same time, you have people in their early 20s coming into a workforce after spending 4 years. Listen, I studied engineering, or I studied computer science, and I wanted to get a high paying job at this place, but I've come into this world where they're saying that developers will not be needed in the next 18 months or 24 months. Then, so there's a lot of dissonance.
Yeah.
I think fundamentally for me, it doesn't hurt to be kind. You don't know what someone else is going through. And I think to be able to be kind to someone else, it's important for you to do the work on yourself, to learn how to be kind to yourself first, because you can't fake kindness also. I did a I did a workshop. I do these personal branding workshops also for different
Mhm.
groups, and I did a workshop for a startup group. And one of the participants in the form said, "I need to learn how to be authentic. How do I come across more authentic in my investor pitches?" I said, "See, I can't. It's not a gamification thing. You can't fake it, because especially someone who's going to give you a lot of money, who's thinking of being a partner to you for 3, 4, 5, 7 years, they want to know who is the real you, and you can't BS through that."
Right, that's true. And especially in creative industries like yours, being empathetic is actually the key to, stay intact with the entire team, and the attrition rate also will be less in that way. So, especially in this industry, for other industry like for hardcore engineering industries and all, situation would have been different. I guess. So, you have worked with brands like bigger brands like Accenture and also Tata Motors and 3M. So, how do you create impact in marketing by working with such brands? Because the brand is big, the name is big, and also the pressure is also big while doing the marketing for these brands. So, how do you create a real impact?
Well, I think number one, understanding the context of the impact that they desire, and do you have the ability to deliver on that desired impact that they are looking for? Do you have the track record for it? Can you speak for it convincingly, honestly, with credibility? Do you have the team to back it up? Because when you're, let's say, for example, I'll take a different example.
Mhm.
If you take the Singapore ecosystem, startup ecosystem, right? Singapore, and I have a lot of Singaporean friends. I was supposed to move there a little while back. I'm just saying this as a caveat to anyone listening and who's from Singapore and was like, what is this guy going to say? All I'm saying is that Singapore is a fantastically well developed nation. I mean, they're so far ahead in so many metrics across the world. But I think at one level, what's worth considering, and this is also something that a lot of people believe over there, when you have so many things that are so well developed, it's also easy to get into some sort of comfort zone, maybe not want to take too many risks, because that's not necessary, because you have to follow a certain kind of narrative, because there are certain kinds of systems, processes, approaches that lead to certain kind of consistent results that grow, year on year, quarter on quarter, etc. So the one perception is in the Singapore startup ecosystem is that the corporates don't always have the greatest appetite to work with fresh startups, right? Because there's so much risk, there's so much unknown. I mean, for that matter, it's sure. Like, I live in Bangalore, and Bangalore has a well developed ecosystem. So if you have a really great product, you've showed some amount of product market fit, some amount of traction, then companies are willing to listen. In Singapore, there's a little bit more resistance. And that is just a reflection of the fact that when you're working with big companies, quite often, more often than not, they have specific ways of functioning to deliver those results repeatedly, because there are massive investors, whether it's government is your partner at some level, or private equity or VCs, whoever. Somebody has to be, get the return on investment, right? Or you're paying the bank. So how is it that you ensure sort of doing that? So I mean, this is a long winded way of saying that ultimately, when you're working with bigger companies, you need to be able to have line of sight on how is it that you are set up to account for all the different layers that they have. Because ultimately, if they know that you have accounted for, addressed all the concerns that fit in different layers of the organization, different functions, different job functions, verticals, etc., then ultimately it can, you want to get to a point where it's just two people sitting in a boardroom or in a meeting room having a conversation, or a small team. There is trust and there is belief that things will get delivered. So accounting for that plays a key role. I mean, this is my interpretation. Maybe it's also a reflection of something that I'm focusing on right now, which is just around the idea of consistency, credibility, stability of a certain sort. Maybe that's also a reflection of the work that I do here and now. But I think that's a key thing. Also, I think in this changing world where a lot of things are changing very dynamically, I think giving people an understanding of how is it that you can help them feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more confident around your approach from a few different angles, it can actually lead to a more transparent and trust based conversation.
Right. We all know that LinkedIn, especially in, recent months, I would say, or recent years, is actually evolving and making itself as a place for influencers, especially business leaders. So, how do you think that AI is playing a role in this entire scenario?
Great question. So I think, for example, you want to be of someone of influence, and you want to share your perspective often, because as a platform, the platform rewards you sharing your perspective at a certain cadence. At least once a week, you're posting something, high quality content. That's very, very important today. I think you can post 3, 4, 5 times a week. I know of some accounts that post once every hour. It's almost like a news feed. It's like a Twitter feed of some sort on LinkedIn. But I think taking AI into account, one of the approaches that we have taken for a client of ours, for example, when we started out with this gentleman, MD of a large pharma manufacturing business, he was at about 130 followers, right? But he's very clear that, listen, I don't want to get sucked down into this LinkedIn social media rabbit hole. I've got other things to do, which is the case with most leaders. They have other things to take care of. So we leveraged an AI avatar, where it's a virtual avatar of this individual in his likeness, and created a series of videos. Now, because the technology is such that is so well developed that people view it and they think it's him talking, right? So, but it's not enough just to leverage AI avatars. We can't put substandard content with his head, right? So you need to put very high quality content. So we focused, reinforced, double down on that. And that's the same thing. Multiple clients that we work with, they've all got it that top 1% of content quality, which is what LinkedIn puts as a benchmark to be seen as a thought leader. And that's primarily because the one thing that I tell people is that you have to focus on high quality content and use AI tools in a way that can support.
Right, right, absolutely. So, actually, you led the rebranding process of ABBS. So, what was your vision behind it, and how did you give it life?
So with ABBS, it's worth mentioning that some people might have seen a rebrand more recently, but we actually designed the very three triangles logo in 2017. So that was the first time originally that the rebrand happened. And I think with the leadership team, Ajitesh, especially, we've been fortunate to have a great interaction, great rapport. And so when they were thinking of refreshing the brand after 7 years, he very kindly reached out to us again. We had a great conversation. So, very briefly, when we were designing the logo for the first, or, redesigning the logo for the first time in 2017, at that time, the ABBS logo was this one single triangle with an A inside it. Yeah. And at that time, Ajitesh, one of the things that he had said was that We want to come across as an organization where, when we go into these international education fairs, for us to be taken seriously, being taken credibly. So we want to have that kind of standard, that kind of look coming across. But then we have, our approach is such as that we spent a lot of time interviewing students, interviewing faculty, senior leadership, even people in the admin staff, to understand what is the pulse, what is ABBS.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, when someone thinks of Nita, for example, they have an idea, right? They will think of 2 3 words to describe you, your mannerisms, how you come across as an individual. Same with me, same with most people. A brand is also a person. ABBS is a personality. So we had to understand what are the common things that people do it. Taking that, we eventually fast forward, we arrived at Magic Dreams Leadership, Achieve, Accelerate, Aspire, or Achieve, Aspire, Accelerate. I'm not getting the order right, but those 3 words. So that was that. And then fast forward to 2024 when we did the brand again. At this time, it was okay. Now social media has changed tremendously. Majority of our communication is happening that much more on all these platforms. How is it that we can create next level engagement, significantly sort of drive that? We live in this time where now, the dopamine hit is 2 or 3 seconds. You need to capture someone's attention within that first 2 or 3 seconds when you're going through reels on Instagram or on Snapchat or TikTok, wherever it might be. So we had to re-envision the language in a way that would be visually very exciting, but still spoke for a certain kind of core ethos and also a certain kind of dynamism that allowed for a very exciting visual expression. And then our thing was also about how is that we can empower the teams in ways that they can take it forward, because we live in this time where why should there be dependency on someone to open one CorelDRAW file or Photoshop file or AI file and do it.
Yeah, yeah,
So we actually pushed a lot of the templates, almost all the templates onto Canva. So then the team dynamically can create, so dynamism not just in the creation. So taking the genesis of what the identity was, then taking the dynamism into the visual design, but also dynamism in how it can be expressed on an ongoing basis. So
yeah.
that was one thread.
Yeah, especially not getting dependent, even if the team changes, the dependency should not be there while
Yes,
translating that brand value.
very much.
So, after working closely with ABPS, what do you think that makes it stand out in the education space?
I think it just comes down to the consistency with which the leadership team, in my experience, because we've been fortunate enough to do a few different education branding projects, and I find that the founding family, the promoter family, they're very passionate about education. Genuinely so. Sure. Objectively looked at from the outside, a lot of people think, oh, education is also a very profitable business. Every business is profitable if you are committed to creating value consistently. Then the business will grow. Then it will create a lot of value. And here the customers are the students and the parents. At some level, the customers are also the teachers and the faculty and the admin. It speaks volumes for the fact that they have people who've been there for 10, 15 plus years. They have a certain kind of commitment. So I think the care with which they approach people and the foresight with which they always sort of thinking ahead, I've definitely found that, because to do one thing consistently over and over and over again, some people get tired and some people can actually use that as a massive springboard. And that comes from genuine commitment to that.
Yeah, and that's the difference actually. Yeah, that's the actual difference.
100%.
So, many students must be watching our podcast. So, what do you think? Like, what is the future of branding, marketing, and especially the use of AI in branding?
Well, I mean, I might say something now and it'll be outdated in 6 weeks, because the landscape is changing so fast. But I do think that we are going into a time where, in the opportunity of personalization through AI, where you can, if you look at 2 years ago, Cadbury's came out with this campaign with Shah Rukh Khan, where he was wishing everyone happy Diwali, and he was like, "Happy Diwali, Nita. This is wishing you from TVS Motors XYZ, which is near, MG Road." Someone else is saying, "Happy Diwali, Karn. This is from Vinati Motors in Basveshwar Nagar." and his lips are moving a certain way, his eye movements, you can't tell the difference. This is 2.5 years ago, right? So if you have that degree of hyper personalization, so that's one thing. And this is some, I'm not saying that anything that people don't already know, but in the context of, we also live at a time where people want greater control of their privacy. As much as all these platforms are doing really interesting things, Instagram, Facebook, I mean, Meta, LinkedIn, etc., we're seeing a lot of micro communities which are quote unquote dark, as in they don't want to be on these public platforms. They want to have 20, 30, 40 people, private group, meeting in private places, not posting on the conventional social media, maybe sharing some images on a WhatsApp group, and that's it. So this idea of hyper personalization in privacy, to have a very personalized experience of my life with people that I care about around shared interests. I don't need to impress the whole world, or I don't need to make an impression on the whole. So fandoms, micro communities, even big brands, big global brands are creating those kind of micro communities in these specific groups, because that they want to find the super fans, right? They don't necessarily want to do the spray and pray approach. They want to find the super fans, because hyper personalization allows for that. I mean, that's one key thought I can comes to mind to share, and there will be many others. Like I said, in two
Yeah,
months time it will be something else.
right. So you recently did a 7,000-kilometer road trip across India. So what was exactly the idea behind it, and what did it teach you?
So typically, when you think of long road trips, right? Oh my God, someday I'm definitely going to do that. I really want to go and experience all of these things on a road trip. For me, it was nothing like that. In February, I was having a conversation with my brother. I was like, it might be interesting to do a road trip. I had not thought about anything before that. Mid March, I got in the car and I left. I started in Bangalore and I drove all the way up to the Wagah border near Pakistan in Amritsar. Um, and it was more along the coast. So from Bangalore going into Maharashtra, then going into Gujarat, Rajasthan, then coming down central. So from going into Punjab, then Punjab to Delhi NCR, then Agra, then Madhya Pradesh, eventually Maharashtra, and back to Karnataka. So, I mean, just some quick tips over there, right? I think if you're ever thinking of doing a road trip, make sure you carry cash, because quite often when you're going from one state to the other, you will just discover. I remember I was driving across from Maharashtra to Gujarat, and it just happened to be in strawberry season. It just was, and there are so many people, fresh strawberries, literally from the field right behind over there, 100% organic, whatever, however you might sort of call it, right? I just wasn't carrying the cash to do that. So I learned my lesson. Then, I kid you not, Nita, I was driving somewhere in Gujarat, and I found myself in this small town which was well known for its architecture of the Bori community. And I had 50 rupees. I got on a massive bag of chikus, the most delicious chikus I've had in life. So, I mean, just carrying cash around. But I think the bigger thing I noticed was that majority of our development in our country is definitely concentrated in the big cities. When you go into smaller cities and you're driving through different parts of India, there are significantly more similarities than there are differences. Of course, there are differences in language, but I think for the most part, people are trying to create a better life for themselves. Their aspiration is to go to a bigger city, earn more money. There are lots of parts of India that are sort of forgotten almost. At the same time, I remember I drove from Gujarat to when I was driving from Ahmedabad up towards Jaipur side. I caught one part of that massive, I don't know, 8-10 lane super highway that's coming. The infrastructure that's being created is fantastic. There are a few places that I went into towns where they said, we have not had any kind of the connectivity that has been created because the infrastructure over the last 10 years has made a significant difference in our lives. And I spent 3.5 weeks. So just numbers. I spent 3.5 weeks. I drove on myself. It was primarily a solo road trip. Friends of mine threatened to say that they will join me, but they didn't join. Nobody joined eventually. It cost me less than 2 lakhs overall, like end to end, food, stay, petrol, everything, right? So if you do it with two, three friends, you can have a fantastic experience. It was definitely I would say it's once in a lifetime kind of experience. I'm already planning my next road trip, which I'm going to do around South India. So I want to do. I have a strong spiritual practice, so I want to do a temple trail across Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So I'm going to do that sometime in the next few months. Yeah, I mean that's a little bit about the road trip.
Great. When are you doing the trip towards the eastern part of the country?
Eastern part of the country, great question. Actually, that was the other thing. After I got done with that road trip last year, I came back and I said I want to do two more road trips. One is towards the northeast, and the other is Ladakh and Kashmir. Of course, now is not the best time to go into Kashmir, maybe. Um, but the northeast, there's so much to see. So I'm hoping, my intent was in the next 2-3 years to cover all these road trips, and be done with it. So I would very confidently have seen, I don't know, maybe like 60% of, a lot of the stuff that's worth seeing.
Yeah, great. All right. It was really an insightful conversation, and thank you so much for joining us in today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nita. Lovely speaking with you.